For as long as there have been UFOs, there have been whispers of government cover-ups, right? You know the story. Strange lights, supposed crashes, and then just silence from the officials. So today, let's dive into all that and see what the records actually have to say.
I mean, this is the big one, right? The question at the very heart of this entire mystery. It's such a compelling idea. But, to find a real answer, we gotta look past all the speculation and really dig into the evidence. All right, so here's how we're gonna tackle this. First, we'll crack into 3 of the most famous cases out there. Then, we'll see if we can piece together the government's, let's call it a suppression playbook. We'll try to figure out why they're so secretive, push for a little more transparency, and I'll even give you your very own UFO detective kit. Sound good? Let's get into it. Okay, let's get into the evidence. Now, these are the cases you've probably heard about, the big ones. They've been fueling conspiracy theories for generations. But what's interesting is when you start to treat them like actual cold cases, follow the paper trail, a totally different picture starts to emerge. And first up, of course, is Roswell. So picture this. It's July 1947. The Roswell Army Airfield puts out this absolutely stunning press release saying they've recovered a flying saucer. I mean, can you imagine? But then, just 24 hours later, poof, they walk it all back. Oh, never mind, it was just a weather balloon. That whiplash is what kicked this whole thing off. Fast forward a few decades, and you get official reports from the Air Force and the GAO basically doubling down, saying, yep, it was a balloon, but a specific one, a top-secret, high-altitude balloon from something called Project Mogul. And that's really the crucial point here, this massive contrast. On one hand, you have the legend, a crashed alien spaceship, maybe even alien bodies, and a huge military cover-up. But on the other hand, you have the official record, which, when you look at the documents from the time, points to something completely, terrestrial. It was a classified project, yeah, but one designed to spy on Soviet nuclear tests. And the debris they found? Foil, balsa wood. It lines up perfectly without explanation. So when you look at those official reports from the USAS and the GAO, and the fact that there's just zero physical alien evidence, the expert consensus is that the whole alien crash story gets a pretty low realism rating. It seems like the cover-up wasn't about hiding visitors from another planet, but about hiding a very earthly, very secret military project. All right, next up, let's hop across the pond to the UK's most famous case, Rendlesham Forest, back in 1980. Here, you had U.S. Air Force personnel stationed in England who reported seeing these really bizarre lights out in the forest, not just once, but over several nights. One of them, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, even made an audio recording of it and wrote this super detailed memo. But the really interesting part, it's what the UK's Ministry of Defense did about it, which was, basically nothing. So again, you have this huge gap. The legend is this incredible story of a landed spacecraft, maybe even direct contact, followed by a coordinated cover-up. But the record, which we now have thanks to Freedom of Information releases, tells the story of, bureaucratic indifference. Basically, the Ministry of Defense looked at Halt's memo, decided the lights weren't a threat to national security, and just filed it away. They thought much more mundane things, like the beams from a nearby lighthouse, were way more likely explanations. So, once again, no recovered craft, no physical proof, and you have official files that show a lack of interest, not some big conspiracy. The realism rating for an alien encounter at Rendlesham, it's also low. It's a really fascinating story of some strange lights, for sure, but a confirmed close encounter, the evidence just isn't there. Okay, for our third case, we're heading down to South America to what's often called Brazil's Roswell. It's 1996 in a town called Varginha, and 3 young women report seeing something truly terrifying. A weird, brown, kind of oily creature with huge red eyes. As you can imagine, the story just exploded. Rumors started flying that the military had actually captured aliens. But it took years for an official army inquiry to come out with a very, very different, and honestly, kind of tragic explanation. And this case, maybe more than any other, shows the huge gap between folklore and fact. The legend is basically a sci-fi thriller. The official record, though, tells a much more human story. It identifies the quote-unquote creature as a well-known local man who had significant disabilities. The sad conclusion they reached was that he was probably just squatting in the dark, and the witnesses, startled, misinterpreted what they saw. So, based on the Brazilian Army's official inquiry and the evidence they presented, the conclusion is pretty clear. The realism rating is low. This seems to be a case of a really profound and unfortunate misidentification, not an actual extraterrestrial event. Okay, so let's step back for a second. When you lay these famous cases side by side, a clear pattern starts to show up, doesn't it? You've got misdirection with Roswell's weather balloon. You have non-investigation in Rendlesham. You get an official denial in Virginia. Heck, even in Australia, files were conveniently lost. It all points to a pattern of controlling information. And what's the common thread here? None of it actually requires aliens to explain what happened. And this pattern, it's not just random chance. It's more like a playbook for how to manage what the public thinks and, more importantly, how to protect secrets. So let's break down the 4 key tactics that we see over and over again. Okay, number 1, misdirection. Think of the weather balloon at Roswell. Number 2, concealment. Just classifying something as national security to hide it. And this one's a biggie. Number 3, data loss. Oops, the records are lost, just like what happened in Australia. And finally, number 4, discrediting witnesses. You create this stigma around the topic so that serious people like pilots and military officers are afraid to speak up. Which brings us to the absolute key question, right? If these huge famous cases don't really hold up as actual alien encounters, then why? Why do governments go to such incredible lengths to be so secretive? What are they actually hiding? Well, this quote right here gives us the biggest clue of all. Turns out, according to the CIA's own declassified documents, their super top secret spy planes like the U-2 and the A-12 were the real reason for more than half of all UFO reports back in the 50s. Think about it. They couldn't admit they had these incredible planes flying around without giving away secrets to the Soviets, so they just let people think it was aliens. It was the perfect cover. And just like that, the real motives start to become pretty clear. The number 1 reason? National security. They're hiding advanced but totally human-made technology. Then there's the PR angle, preventing mass panic or not letting your enemies use it as propaganda. And sometimes, honestly, it's just easier for a big government agency to say nothing at all than to admit, hey, we don't actually know what that was. But here's the thing. This whole playbook of secrecy, it comes at a price. When people feel like they're being lied to or misled, it just erodes trust in government, in institutions. And what's really ironic is that now even some defense officials are arguing that being too secret could actually be dangerous. It could end up hiding real threats to our airspace from pilots and controllers. And this quote from the U.S. House Oversight Committee really captures how the tide is starting to turn. There's this growing feeling, even inside the government, that the old way of just brushing this all under the rug, it's just not working anymore. So what's the solution? Well, there are some pretty clear steps we could take. For one, publish all the historical files for the public to see. Create official, non-stigmatized ways for pilots and soldiers to report what they see without fear of ridicule. And establish independent groups, like the new AARO office in the US, whose whole job is to analyze the data without any of the old baggage. Look, this topic is always changing, and new claims pop up all the time. So it's really important to have the right tools to think clearly about it all. Think of this next part as your own personal detective kit, designed to help you cut through the noise. And the most important tool in that kit is this one simple idea. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The idea that we're being visited by aliens is about as extraordinary as it gets. So it's going to take more than a blurry video or a friend of a friend story. It requires hard, verifiable, extraordinary proof. So what have we learned? Well, the evidence suggests the great UFO cover-up has always been more about hiding our own earthly secrets than hiding extraterrestrial visitors. But that doesn't mean the mystery's solved. There are still things in our skies we can't explain. And with a critical mind and a real push for transparency, the truth is definitely out there. It's just waiting for us to piece it together from the actual evidence. So the real question is, now that you have the tools, what will you uncover?